From KPFK in Los Angeles, California, Valley Free Radio in Florence, Massachusetts, WNUC in Detroit, and BikeTalk.org worldwide, this is Bike Talk.
Bike Talk.
Welcome to Bike Talk. I'm Taylor Nichols.
And I'm Nick Richard.
Hey, Nick.
Hey.
It's pouring rain in Los Angeles and most of California. That means you get the opportunity to ride in the rain.
Yeah. How is it?
It's fun.
Yeah.
Long pause. As long as you don't have to be too dry when you get to where you're going, it's totally fun. I wore shorts one day, so my legs got wet, but wasn't a problem. And the next day, my pants got a little wet.
That doesn't sound too bad.
It wasn't. In fact, in Los Angeles, we had two big events this weekend. The first was on Saturday, Bikefest, which is just a festival to celebrate Bike LA and biking in general. And then on Sunday was the opposite, and that was the World Day of Remembrance, which is a worldwide event, and for a much different reason.
For traffic victims.
For traffic victims. I was able to ride to both of them in the rain and support both organizations. And it dawned on me that the rain's not the problem. The problem is the cars and the traffic and the lack of bike infrastructure.
Yeah, biking in the rain is like walking in the rain.
Yeah, or singing in the rain.
So you got some sound from Bikefest, right? From friend of the show?
Yep, I got a little interview with Jennifer Gil. And then right after that, I have two short interviews from the World Day of Remembrance. And I think it's kind of a yin and yang of what we're going through with bikes now. They are incredibly fun and positive, and yet at the same time, they can be scary and dangerous because of the environment that we have to bike in.
Yeah. So here's Bikefest.
It's pouring rain in Los Angeles, and I rode my bike down thinking I'm one of the brave ones. But I get here, and who do I see but Jennifer Gil, who is a longtime bike advocate, a member of the Los Angeles Bicycle Advisory Committee, and she rode down in the pouring rain to Bikefest. Jennifer, welcome to Bike Talk, and tell me why it's important to support Bikefest, and even more so, why did you ride today?
Well, it was a difficult decision, actually, because I thought, why do I want to do this? And then I went, because I've ridden in the rain in Puerto Rico. I've ridden in the rain in Pennsylvania, in Rochester, New York. So I went, I can do this. I can do it.
And you're riding a beautiful e-bike.
And I'm riding a Cannondale. I've had it for 4 years now. Didn't have one problem. I have knobby tires, so I didn't skid. And I had to run up on the sidewalk just to get away from a big puddle down on Alameda, but whatever.
And I might add that you have a Bike Talk sticker on your bike.
And it sparkles.
Yes, it's
it always sparkles.
Yeah.
And I really respect Bike Talk. I listen to a lot of the episodes.
Great.
And I always learn quite a bit from them. And it helps me to continue riding.
Yeah.
Because I need to feel like I'm part of a group that really we're doing a good thing. We're helping the climate. And
but what's so nice about Bikefest is that there's so many different people here today, from different parts of the bike world and the bike community, sort of just celebrating biking in the rain.
Yeah. And you could see the people who biked in the rain, they're just like me, kind of soggy. And
we dried out.
I wore my sandals,
right.
And so my bare toes they dried off pretty fast. Right. And I wore this transparent jacket
with your leopard pattern underneath.
And my leopard pattern, and I got my turquoise scarf.
Right.
And then I've got my camouflage tights that dried up as well.
Yeah.
So,
but I don't know how many women bike in the rain, and I don't know how many women in their 60s bike in the rain. And you, I think, check both those boxes, if I'm not being too personal.
I check a couple more.
Do you want to tell us what they are or not?
Well, I'm 29 going on 80, okay? And I'm happy about it.
Yeah.
And I listen to women like Jane Fonda and Helen Mirren.
Right.
And all kinds of women are like, wow, man, these guys are still spunky. Yeah. I want to be spunky.
Well, you totally are. Jennifer Gil, thank you for all of your work and the BAC and the advocacy over the years. And thanks for coming on Bike Talk.
Absolutely. Thank you for being a part of the BAC as well. It's really important. You're always positive, and you have positive ideas. We need so many more positive ideas, and that's what we are gathering at these festivals. And, we just get more and more data, and we confront the next opponents, right?
The next obstacle, whoever it may be, whether it be the federal government right now or some council member. You're right. So thank you for that.
Yeah, we're pushing a rock up the hill, but then we race down the hill afterwards, right?
Exactly. Jennifer Gil, thanks.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you.
And that was Jennifer Gil at Bikefest in the party mood. And in a completely different mood is Rob Kadota and Damian Kevitt, who were at the World Day of Remembrance and also in downtown Los Angeles.
The World Day of Remembrance for Traffic Victims, which was all over the world. They had that.
Right.
Tell me why you're here, Rob.
It's been a weekend of advocacy in a rainy day in LA. Yesterday we were at Bikefest, which supports LA County Bicycle Coalition and work around making the streets safer. And then here today it's about the tragedies that happen on our streets every day.
Yeah. I commented recently that the longer it takes to put in safe infrastructure, that increase the number of these chairs.
Yeah, absolutely. What a sad testament and display of empty chairs with yellow roses.
Yeah, 711.
Quite the statement. And then you have photos and descriptions of some of the people who've passed.
Right, it's no empty chairs is what they're talking. And so a lot of the chairs are adorned with memorabilia from the victim, and it's really sad to see their just energetic faces.
It's poignant. Yeah. It brings it home, makes it very real.
Thanks, Rob.
You're welcome. Thanks.
I think this is our 6th year we've done something for World Day of Remembrance for road traffic victims. And just so everyone understands, World Day of Remembrance is not our creation. This is something that is a UN-recognized day. It's been very popular in Europe for many years. It's really sort of gained traction in the U.S. really in about 3 or 4 years since Families for Safe Streets National and Vision Zero Network and a few organizations sort of banded together to sort of organize across the U.S. And we have been really just sort of striving to do stuff bigger and better and make it more visible. And we've gone mainstream this year. I mean, California Office of Traffic Safety came to us and said, we need to do something for World Day of Remembrance. All right. They brought in CHP. They brought in Caltrans. County of Los Angeles did a presentation on behalf of World Day of Remembrance. City of LA did one. West Hollywood is about to do one. And I get it. Presentations don't by themselves save lives. That is PR activities. But I'll tell you, this is the first time we're getting recognitions for this day. And that does mean something. That means there's a growing movement to say, hey, these are unacceptable fatalities.
And the memorial is 711 chairs with yellow roses. Whose idea was that, and what's the reason behind that?
That's a bit of a combination. There's a friend of mine named Michelle Shane who lost his daughter Emily Shane in 2010 on PCH. It's the Emily Shane Foundation. And it was his idea to have an empty chair to symbolize a life lost. And the concept is an empty chair at the dinner table, an empty chair in the holidays as a remembrance of that person who's no longer with us. And when Office of Traffic Safety came to us and talking to Michelle, I said, let's do 711 empty chairs, one for every person killed in LA County just in 2024. And here we are, 711 black chairs with bright yellow roses, and I want in every single one of them. And it's a very stark, sort of shocking picture.
Empty, almost. It feels sort of empty sometimes when you look at the sea of these chairs with those yellow dots.
It is truly startling. I hope those listening can see some photos of this here. And we have also chairs that individual families have personally decorated. One of them particularly just heart-wrenching is a little baby chair for a 1-year-old that was hit and killed by a drunk driver, and they have his chair with his photo and notes from his brothers and sisters that they wrote to their little brother who never survived. And it's just heart-wrenching.
Well, Thank you for putting the memorial together here in Los Angeles. Damian Kevitt, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So that was Rob Kadota and Damian Kevitt at the World Day of Remembrance. And Damian's been on the show many times. He's, of course, the founder of SAFE, Streets Are For Everyone. And I got to tell you, Nick, it really was a very stark image looking at these 711 black chairs with a single yellow rose on each chair, signifying the number of people that have been killed only in Los Angeles in 1 year.
Yeah. Every year we have the World Day of Remembrance for traffic victims. And thanks for going to the one in LA, Taylor. Here's Charlie's news.
Great.
Hey, it's Charlie here with the week's news. LA City Controller Kenneth Mejia created an app that allows you to closely examine LA's budget to see where your tax dollars are and aren't going. You can compare budgets from fiscal year to fiscal year in over 40 categories. There's also an app that shows liability payouts. This was all shared by Kenneth in a video on Instagram, which highlighted unsafe sidewalk conditions and implied that perhaps more money should be spent to fix them rather than paying out liability claims. You can explore these at budget.lacontroller.app and liabilityclaims.lacontroller.app. In disappointingly unsurprising news, Streetsblog reports that the House Transportation and Infrastructure Chair, Sam Graves, has signaled that there will be no spending on biking or walking infrastructure in the next federal transportation bill. Graves, a Republican congressman from Missouri, said, "We're not going to be spending money on murals and train stations or bike paths or walking paths. We're going to spend money on traditional infrastructure, that's roads and bridges." End quote. In the last 35 years, though, money has been allocated for multimodal infrastructure, so his intention is actually not traditional at all. Call your congressperson now for the bill that will come out in September of 2026. In 2016, voters in LA approved a $400 million plan to complete the proposed LA River bike path through central Los Angeles. This can be done by 2028, but LA Metro has signaled it will opt for an above-channel bike path that will cost $1.1 billion and would most certainly not get done by 2028 without the funding. CalBike is urging you to contact your LA County supervisor to urge them to support an in-channel design, which could get done by 2028 and be used year-round except for a few weeks during the rainy season. CalBike is also advocating for a joint powers authority to make sure the project gets done on time. In rather interesting news, Cycling News reports that Peter Unick's 37th velodrome design is now open in Tucson, Arizona. It is the world's first aluminum surface velodrome, aluminum being chosen for Arizona in order to withstand extreme heat in summer to allow for year-round use. Lastly, Cycling West reports that in Wyoming and Idaho, a volunteer coalition by the name of Save Teton Pass Trail is aiming to raise $5 million by the end of the year to unlock an additional $1 million in federal land access program funding to build a 3.6-mile trail segment. Almost $8 million of the $13.5 million total budget has already been secured. The segment would connect Wyoming and Idaho's Teton valleys and get plenty of use in the summer, but also in the winter by skiers. The segment would be part of the Greater Yellowstone Trail, a 180-mile trail network connecting Jackson Hole, Teton Valley, and West Yellowstone. For Bike Talk News, I'm Charlie Lighthizer.
There's a couple of things we should talk about Charlie's news. I think the first one is the thing that Jim Pokrass always says. You know, cities spend more money on paying out insurance liability suits than they do on fixing the sidewalks.
If they would just pay the money to make streets and sidewalks safe, they wouldn't have to pay all these liabilities. Well, it's like with everything they get sued about.
You can pay me now or you can pay me later. Also, I thought what was interesting was the story that Charlie read about the river bike path in LA, about Metro seemingly wanting to do the more expensive, over $1 billion bike path rather than the cheaper, easier to finish in time for the Olympics bike path that would run down in the channel of the LA River. Because it's pouring rain in LA now, we wouldn't be able to use the bike path. But not that many people like to ride in the rain like Jennifer Gil and Taylor Nichols do.
We got a lot of LA news. One thing on the national level, Charlie mentioned that Republican House member.
Yeah, what's that guy's name?
His last name is Graves. He's a Republican from Missouri. He said the USDOT is not going to fund walking or biking or trains or murals. Somehow that murals got thrown in there.
Do we think this guy Graves from Missouri, is he a conservative or would we call him MAGA? Going back to what some of our listener emails have been about. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, we've been talking about whether biking is a left or right issue. And at this point, if you're Republican, and especially if you're in the government, I mean, I guess there's a few that are breaking with the
Yeah.
administration, but there's so much guilt there.
So hold it. It seems like you're saying if you are a Republican and you're in the government, then you're MAGA. You've given up being a conservative in favor of being a MAGA.
Yeah, I mean, there are exceptions, right?
Yeah,
And
I guess.
there are people who are opposing the president now, I think, or like trying to slow, but basically, yeah.
All this negativity is driving me crazy. Maybe we should read the listener email we got.
Yeah, it's from Rick Bosacker, MD, who we've talked to before.
Rick writes, if there's one word that describes cycling and our community, it's positivity. Whether alone or in a group, a simple ride connects us to our bodies, our hearts, community, and the natural world. Cycling is a welcome balm and mobile meditation. God, isn't that the truth? As our broken world seems to assault us with negativity everywhere we look. And I just thought that was such a bright light in the darkness of all this stuff that we're seeing, you know?
He says, as discussed on this podcast, research on pluralistic ignorance shows that people are far more supportive of cycling than anyone would know. Because of these trolls and our equal and opposite response, people mistakenly believe their support of cycling puts them in the minority rather than the majority. Politicians misapprehend public support, and positive ideas become part of the political culture wars.
Great. What does pluralistic ignorance mean?
Right. Okay. So I asked the internet, and AI said pluralistic ignorance is a social phenomenon where individuals privately disagree with a perceived group norm but remain silent, mistakenly believing their own views, are a minority.
Oh, wow, I like that. And it fits.
Yeah, so let's not remain silent.
Right. And thanks, Rick, for that email. He's always got something interesting and also positive to say.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. Now we have our next installment of your series
Right.
on.
This is with Josh Bowden of Adventure Cycling. And we've talked about a reason and a route and the logistics of the ride and what you do with your regular life when you're on the ride. And today, Josh talks a little bit about the ride itself, the gear that you need, the gearing that you need, the tools that you might need, and some of the camping equipment you might need. So this is Josh Bowden of Adventure Cycling. Well, let's talk about the actual bike and the equipment for the bike and loading the bike. We talked a little bit about dynamo hubs earlier, and I did a deep dive into that and really realized you're right.
Oh boy.
You do need a adapter from the dynamo hub to then charge your battery bank. And then with your battery bank, you would charge your phone or whatever else you wanted to do. So that was really interesting. I will, I think, rebuild my wheel with a dynamo hub because I like the idea of having that. But I wonder if you could talk a little bit about preparing your bike and what kind of bike is best if there is a best, and what is the basic equipment.
Yeah, I would say usually the best bike is the one that you have and you're familiar with and you've ridden. A lot of people might take this as a chance like to buy the new bike and then take it on the trip, but you really want to make sure you're comfortable with that bike
Right.
and that you like it a lot. In terms of best bike, like the route dictates your bike choice, also your style of traveling. I've seen people do coast to coast rides where they're very athletic. They're doing 100 miles a day and they're on basically a road bike carrying minimal gear.
Right.
For some people, that's amazing. I think for a lot of people, that sounds pretty torturous. So in that instance, going lightweight, the road bike is perfectly fine. But for more people, maybe something like a touring or gravel bike that can carry a bit more weight, a bit more creature comforts is going to be worthwhile. Or say you're doing an off-road route, Great Divide mountain bike route is a really famous, popular one where you're on dirt and gravel roads a lot. Don't be taking a road bike on that. You're going to be looking more like gravel bike, mountain bike. So that just dictates that.
Right.
But I definitely advocate, you don't need to drop $2,000, $4,000 on a new bike to do your trip. There's a decent chance if you're interested in touring, you're probably riding bikes already. There's a good chance the bike you have might do the job for you.
Great.
Yeah, in terms of gears, before we even get to like your gearing and racks and everything, again, The most important thing is being comfortable on your bike. And the points that matter are what we call the contact points, where you are actually touching the bike. Thinking about your saddle, that's definitely the most important one to get comfortable with.
Right.
Think about your pedals and shoes. Make sure those work for you, and getting good handlebars or like grips or bar tape. Those tend to be relatively inexpensive pieces to change around. And then as long as those are working well for you, because you're probably used to riding an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, but now you're going to be on
Totally.
that bike 6+, 8+ hours a day.
Yeah.
So need to make sure those really work for you. I've had trips that went south purely because I learned on that trip my saddle was not for me, and I had to replan my trip
Right.
mid-trip just so I could keep going.
Right.
And yeah, like pedals and shoes, there's probably a lot of debate out there. And maybe you're
Yeah.
thinking about this. Maybe hear from you. A lot of people like to go with just flat pedals, so they can wear more regular shoes or hiking shoes. Some people like to be clipped in, with a cycling specific shoes. There's no best. It really is just your personal preference. I'm
Yeah,
curious
I,
what you
I would
you think
use
you'll be using.
touring shoes personally and just toe clips. I mean, I don't ride to the end
Mm.
of the driveway without putting my foot in my toe clips. I'm just more comfortable that way. But I would not use clipless pedals, I don't think, and cleats. That just seems like too much work and too much uncomfortableness, when I'm off the bike.
But yeah, that's perfect. Of like toe clips are great, especially I think for touring. It's nice to be able to reduce your number of things you have when you have the clipless pedals, and you like, okay, I need at least one more pair of shoes because I'm
Right,
not going to be walking around town duck walking in my clipless shoes.
right,
And then another thing to really think about is like the gearing on your bike, like the actual like drivetrain going
right,
on. I think the traditional touring gearing for a lot of people would be what we call a 3x setup, meaning you have 3 rings in the front. That's the really traditional thing. I've discovered recently that 3x equipment is really hard to get these days.
Oh,
It's either
really?
very inexpensive and very low end,
Right.
or you're getting very specialty, high end
Yeah.
things from unique manufacturers. And there's not really a middle market. 3x is kind of out of the mainstream these days.
Oh, I didn't know that. I
Um,
guess that's because they're just getting bigger and bigger in the back.
yes,
I'm not sure
yeah.
how big, 35, maybe even a 40 in the back or something like that.
Oh man, these days we're doing 52 tooth in the back. You can
Really?
get pretty big. Oh man, it's the size of a dinner plate on the back of your bike. They're big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never liked three in the front anyways. It was just,
Hmm.
it made that front shifter too long and I never
Hmm.
liked it. And the bike I have now, which is a Surly Midnight Special, I have just two in the
Oh,
front. And I'm not sure what my biggest in the back is. It's probably a 35 in the back is the biggest. I'll have to count and see what that is.
probably in that range. That's interesting. I have a Surly Minute Special too. That's my go-to bike. So
Oh, yeah,
that's
same with
nice.
me.
I like your taste. You have a good taste in bikes.
Josh, I knew I
Um,
liked you.
That's
Exactly.
right. Yeah, we knew this was working out. But yeah, so traditional. I'm looking at a bike actually hung on the wall in front of me, and it has a 3x setup. But nowadays, a 2x setup. That's what I would probably call like a typical road gearing with 2 gears in the front. Even 1x setups are pretty popular
Right,
now. And again, this is where your route dictates what you need.
right,
For most paved stuff, I would say there's a lot of drivetrains made for gravel riding these days that has exploded in popularity, and that usually used to be pretty. Even 5 years ago, the gravel gearing was pretty expensive and niche. Now it's pretty inexpensive.
right.
I would say for most paved rides, that's going to be great. You still get that low gear, and when you're going off road primarily, mountain bike gearing is the way to go. Like we just mentioned, that giant dinner
Right,
plate in the
right,
back, because you
right.
will never, ever, ever be upset about having a very low gear.
Good advice. Yeah.
Yeah, like you're not, unless you're trying to do some kind of speed record or really push yourself, which is totally great. Most people don't need a super high end gear. It's okay to be spinning out at a pretty low speed because you're more worried about getting up the big hill.
Right.
Gravity will take care of the downhills.
Very good. So that covers pretty much of the bike, the gearing and all that. How
Mhm.
about the racks and the packs?
Yeah, there's two camps I would say when it comes to actually packing your equipment. There's the traditional racks and panniers direction, which that's probably what a lot of people think of when they think of touring.
Right.
You've got the big bags, 2 bags on each side. You got 4 bags set up. And then there's the new kind of bike packing direction, which got more popularized with off-road riding and mountain bike routes, where
Right.
you have kind of more smaller bags, like a one on your handlebar, usually some type of roll, kind of like a big dry bag. You have a bag on the saddle. Like there's different ways of doing it. And this is another personal preference situation, and route dictates. You don't want to be doing racks and panniers on a bunch of, on a single track mountain bike route.
Right.
It's just too wide. You're going to be hitting branches and other obstacles, but it's still very usable. Like in your instance on, doing all pavement, racks and panniers are fantastic. I think it's a really simple setup. That's what I personally use on my paved or gravel like road rides. The bike packing bags, I used them before because I was going very lightweight on a lot of my trips, and they work really well. Benefit of them is it does kind of help you reduce your gear. You just can't fit a lot of stuff in them, so
Right.
you have to go pretty minimal. And also, it tends to keep the bike pretty light and nimble since that weight is kind of moved around places, and it's usually integrated into the bike frame. Think of like a frame bag that's going where
Right.
your water bottles would go. That weight is really centralized on the bike. It helps you keep it nimble versus racks and panniers. You're kind of like a
Right.
boat. You're a big,
Yeah.
heavy boat kind of swerving around a little bit,
Right.
but it just depends. I did the bike packing bags for years, but I ended up going with racks and panniers mostly because it just made packing simpler. The bike
Right.
packing bags, you have to really piecemeal. You have to think pretty critically about where things are going.
Right. And also, I just feel like the racks and panniers offers you more space. I mean, I don't see
Mhm.
myself carrying a lot of stuff, but I like to have a pair of long pants to, put on when I go to a diner to eat or a bar for a beer or something like that. And, maybe a heavier coat too if the mornings and nights are colder.
Absolutely. One thing to think about is leaving a little extra space. I like to go on a trip and make sure I have a little bit of growing space in case I want to get that big bag of chips or,
Right.
there's a sale on that 6 pack of beer and that sounds great. So I like to leave a little bit of space. So if you
Right.
have a rack, maybe that's not putting something on the top of your front rack or the top of the back rack. You leave that empty, you have some straps ready so you can pick something up along the way.
Oh, that's great
Whereas
advice.
again, the bike packing bags, you're pretty minimal. You don't have
Yeah.
a ton of space for
Right.
extra
Right.
things. It's all about your goal and what you want out of your trip. There's
Great.
no right or wrong way.
Well, that's great. And then some small panniers on the front rack. Is that what you're sort of advocating if you are going to go racks and panniers?
Yeah, so usually the air quotes here, traditional pannier setup is like a larger set on the back and then a smaller set on the front. Usually the smaller ones run in about the 12 to 15 liter size per pannier. The back ones are like 20 or even more on each. And that will give you quite a bit of space. A lot of people will also run a big dry bag on the top of the rear rack as well if they need extra space. Or what do you think when you think of panniers? Ortlieb is kind of like the mainstream brand to make them.
Sure.
They make these big bags that are designed to like go from pannier to pannier instead of sitting vertically in line with you in the bike. They go horizontal over the back as you're carrying a lot of gear. But I would say for most people, the front back panniers and maybe like a bar bag,
Right. A
like
bar
something
bag.
hanging out the front, a 5 liter kind of bag. That will suit a lot of people really well, unless you're carrying quite a bit of gear.
Right.
I personally run just those front panniers, the small, like 12-liter ones, front and back. I don't do the larger ones on the back.
Oh,
I do tend to run pretty minimal, so I don't need a ton, but I also have like a half frame bag. I've got a handlebar bag, and then I have that top of the rear rack, like we mentioned. I have
right.
that available to strap extra things on if I need. I bring a little dry bag so I can strap it on if I want.
Great. Great. Can we talk tires real quick?
This is the one that people are always asking
Yeah.
whenever I talk about riding. They're like, "What tires are you using?
Right.
How big are they?" Regardless of tire pick, I always advocate for people to go tubeless with their tires,
Oh, really?
if at all
Oh,
possible. Tubeless, instead of, as the name implies, instead of having a tube inside, which most people are used to on their bikes, the interaction between the tire and the wheel is airtight. So tubeless tires on a bike are similar to car tires. There's no tube in the middle. It's just the rim on the wheel and then the tire. It's airtight. The difference with bikes is they have tubeless sealant inside of there, which is like a silicone compound that acts kind of like blood if you get cut. It will kind of bubble out a little bit, but then it seals that hole and solidifies.
oh,
So I've done numerous rides where I'll finish a ride and I'll look down and see some tubeless sealant on my bike frame and realize like, oh, I got a flat, but I didn't actually get a flat. Like the sealant worked and just totally stopped it. So it helps a whole lot, especially out there touring. You don't want to have to be carrying a bunch of tubes. It just helps out a little bit. So if you can do that, if you need to buy new stuff, that might be a little expensive. A lot of the parts are not terribly expensive. You can probably get new wheels and tires for $200 to $300.
Okay.
So not horribly expensive, but definitely an investment.
Okay.
I always advocate for, especially touring, to bring a frame pump, like a hand pump, just because it's always going to work. The CO2 canisters, those are limited. Those are essentially single use. So it's good to have those, especially if you're running tubeless. If you have to take that tire off for some reason and then remounting it can be very hard with a hand pump. So the blast of air from a CO2 canister is helpful with that. But at minimum, you want a hand pump just because it's never really going to go bad on you. You're not going to run out of it. Even if you're not mechanically minded, this is the kind of tools that I always say you need to bring, just because you won't be able to maybe solve all of your problems, but it will get you to the next bike shop, essentially. That would look like 2 tire levers. I say at least 2 tubes. That's your hand pump, what's called a tire boot, which is basically a really stiff piece of flexible plastic to put inside your tire if there's a huge tear, think like a 2-inch gash.
Right.
I say bring a general multi-tool just because bike-specific ones often don't have things like pliers or a knife, maybe even little scissors. That's going to cover you for a whole lot of stuff. When I go, I'm carrying like a spare tubeless valve. I'm carrying a chain breaker, quick links for my chain. I'm carrying like replacement spokes just in case a spoke breaks on me.
Right.
But that's because I was a bike mechanic. So I know how to do those things. And that's pretty second nature to me versus some people. There's no point in bringing that spare spoke if you don't know how to fix it. Even if you break one spoke, you can usually attach it to another spoke on your wheel, like a zip tie or something like that. And you can kind of limp your way to the next bike shop. It depends on your trip. With your trip being more paved and going in and out of towns, that's a judgment call situation where you'd be okay with that. Versus if you're doing a big off-road expedition where you might be, multiple days between town and the wilderness, I think you need to learn how to fix those things yourself because going days without that being fixed could be a huge issue. So again, it depends on your situation.
Okay. And on the tires, again, I'm going to be mostly on pavement. So how big? I think I'm running 38s on my midnight special now.
Oh, nice.
But they're slick. Or they're not slick, but they're not knobby. And so I'm thinking, how big might I go and how knobby might I go?
You probably see a theme in a lot of the answers, which is it's a lot of personal preference and depends on what you're doing. When you're on pavement and you're mostly pavement, definitely wanting something, slick, not with a lot of knobs, just because that's going to make you roll a bit slower. You want something that's really efficient on that smooth paved surface. The knobs you really only need if you're going to be off-road for any amount of time. I did a trip recently that was about 30, maybe 40% on gravel roads, and I still ran slicks just because I wanted to be really efficient on the pavement sections, and I was fine on the gravel. And in terms of width, my personal preference is that the best tire width is the biggest you can fit. More tire is, in my opinion, is more better. When you run bigger tires, you can run lower tire pressure, which makes for a more comfortable ride. I run 48 millimeter tires even on the road. It feels like I'm just gliding over a lot of the surface. It's very comfortable. I don't feel every little bump in the road, which then makes me feel like more relaxed. I'm not as tense on my bike. I'm not as jarred. Again, no right or wrong, but I definitely advocate for let's look at your bike. Let's see what biggest tires we can fit, especially touring, and let's just do a bigger tire as big as we can.
On the seat stays on the Surly Midnight Special, it says fatties fit fine. So I guess that means that I can go pretty wide.
If you're going to do a big trip, that requires a lot of big preparation, and part of that is going to be learning how to fix your bike while out there in the field.
Camping equipment really quick?
Sure.
A stove? And then what? Just a pot? Was that kind of all you bring to heat stuff up with, or what?
For cooking, you pretty much just need what you said. You need a stove, you need some kind of fuel source, and a pot. I usually bring about a 1 liter size pot in a backpacking style stove. Probably the most famous example is the MSR Pocket Rocket, is probably what a lot of people are familiar with. Very minimal. Essentially, all it does is boil water.
Right.
You can't really simmer on it. You're not going to be sauteing a steak or anything out there. You're mostly reheating water to throw in something like a ramen or into your like dehydrated soup or a dehydrated meal that you brought along. And then usually a spoon. A lot of people bring those big backpacker spoons you might have seen at
Right.
REI or an outdoor sports store. It's nice for when you have the dehydrated meals because those bags are big. Other things I think of camping, people talk about what's called the big four of camping. That is your sleeping bag, your sleeping pad, your tent, and the thing holding it, which is usually for backpacking a pack. For this instance, we'll talk about panniers.
Right.
Those are the things where it's worth throwing a lot of money at, just because that's going to be your house. That's going to be how you sleep. And if you're not
Right.
sleeping and you're not comfortable in your and where you're sleeping, you're not going to make it super far.
Right.
You need your rest.
Right.
So
Okay.
getting those really figured and dialed in and using them ahead of time. I've seen a lot of people, they don't know how to set up their tent because they
That's
bought it,
right.
they put it in their bag, and it's the
Right.
first time they set it up on the trip.
Right.
You can do that. I wouldn't
Yeah.
recommend it.
Yeah.
Even if you can't get out for, a multi-day trip to test it, it's a little strange. Your neighbors might look at you funny, especially being in the middle of LA like you are.
Right.
But you can set up your tent and your sleeping bag in your backyard, or anywhere like that, and or go to the local state
The
park that has a
park. Right.
campground.
Yeah. Let me ask you, a
Yeah.
one-person tent or a two-person tent?
Ooh, that's divisive. That's an. I do a one-person tent. I'm only 5'10", so a one-person tent works well for me.
Right.
But the two-person tent's nice just because you'll have a lot of space in there. You're looking at maybe a half a pound increase in weight to get a two-person tent.
Okay.
The technology these days is, even if you haven't bought gear in 15, 20 years, gosh, you won't even recognize it. It's
Right.
gotten so good lately. So,
Well, the last tent I bought when I was in high school in the late 70s. And it's been a great tent
whoa,
all my life.
yeah,
I'm ready for a new one. So for this trip.
wow.
Well, Josh, it sounds like there's a lot of personal preference, but I think you really kind of laid it out there. But as anyone listening plans their trip, how much of it is going to be on gravel? How much of it is going to be paved? How much am I going to camp? You've given us a lot of information to really tailor your equipment and your needs to your ride. So this was really great. I think the last thing for us to talk about, which we'll talk about next time, is the personal physical preparation for the trip. Josh, this was really great. I got a ton of information today, and I hope our audience did also.
Awesome. I will say a lot of the advice is, again, the theme here is it depends on your trip. My hope is people hear the options they have, like what's out there, and then
Right.
they can answer these questions. So zooming out on your situation, mostly paved, a little like camping and hotel. I would say like what you're thinking of, rear rack, front rack, panniers, a little bit of extra space. That sounds awesome. I think
Right.
that's actually exactly what I would do in your situation. So answering these questions, going from the general to your specific, is how you're going to find the answers to these questions. People can reach out to you. People can reach out to Adventure Cycling. We have a customer service line you can call, and we'll just talk bikes because that's our job.
That's
And
kind of what we've been doing.
yep, exactly. Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. I always advocate too as well. Go to your local bike shop. Like people that work at bike shops love bikes. And I'm sure they would love to help you find what works for your bike, what's possible, the gear they have. And just like me, they have their own personal experiences they can weigh in on. So always ask your local bike shop.
Well, that's great advice. Josh Bowden, Adventure Cycling. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Taylor.
If you have a question for Josh or for Adventure Cycling, let us know at biketalk.org, or you can send us an email at live, or is it livebiketalk@gmail.com.
I thought it was live, but I think you like live.
Either way, it's livebiketalk at gmail.com.
And there's a email shaped button at biketalk.org.
Right. And while we're talking about that, don't forget to go to our website, biketalk.org, and fill out our listener survey. It'll be up for a couple more weeks. And we're really learning a lot about you, our listeners, but also about the kind of show that you like and want. So take a couple of seconds and go to biketalk.org and take the listener survey.
Any initial results, or are you going to save up the
Well,
report?
I kind of thought we'd save them and get as much information as we can. Not only who's listening and what ages and male, female, and all that kind of stuff, but what kind of riding do they do, and what other podcasts do they listen to, and
Yeah.
what kind of advocacy are they a part of?
This is like scientific of us.
Well, we got some help from the friend of the show, Christoph Rincato Tunsi, who is an educator and an academic and a bike survey planner. He gave me a lot of help.
Well, speaking of academics and biking, Charlie Lighthizer, our intern, has an interview with a researcher named Rosa Felix, who wrote a study based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is that triangle pyramid with your physical needs at the bottom, like food and sleep and water. And then on top of that is built safety, love and belonging, esteem, and then finally at the apex, self-actualization.
Oh, wow. Where do
But
bikes fit into that?
well, the bikes aren't in the original Maslow's pyramid, but they are in the hierarchy of cycling needs, which is subtitled Modeling the Self-Assessed Propensity to Bicycle that Rosa Felix did, who's a researcher in Lisbon.
Great. Well, that'll be interesting.
And here it is.
Alrighty, so I'm here today with Rosa Felix from the University of Lisbon in Portugal. She's got a PhD in transportation systems focused on urban cycling, and Rosa was part of a study that came out earlier this year called The Hierarchy of Cycling Needs, Modeling the Self-Assessed Propensity to Bicycle. Thank you, Rosa, for coming on the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
What inspired this study for you?
A lot of different factors, actually. I was doing my PhD in that time in cycling and urban cycling. And what was of interest to me is to understand how people change their daily behaviors, how they choose the mobility option that they will use. And I was interested of how could someone start cycling? What will be their barriers and their drivers to start doing so in a city that doesn't have much to offer. Nowadays, we kind of have more cyclists and more cycling infrastructure and so on. But it was interesting to see and to ask the cyclists back in the days when no one was cycling and nothing was being provided, what made them shift, what made them start cycling on a daily basis.
So what did you find for those barriers to entry? What was the number one most important thing?
We did a survey to more than 1,000 people in Lisbon, directed to people that cycle and people who doesn't. And for the ones that don't cycle, the main, more than 90-something%, we'd like to understand why. What are the barriers? Why don't they become cyclists? So we structured these needs based on the pyramid of needs of Maslow. We could define the tiers of this pyramid. So the needs that are in the base of the pyramid are the ones that place these people very far from becoming a cyclist. And the needs that are on the top of the pyramid are the needs that people that are with a closer propensity to cycle. What we found is that in the base of pyramid is learning how to ride a bicycle. So there are people that are very far to become cyclists because they don't know how to ride a bicycle. And that's kind of obvious, right? There's also the safety concerns. So I would cycle if there was cycling network that is safe for me to ride. I would bicycle if I knew how to deal with the traffic, if I knew how to ride along with traffic. And then in the middle tiers are the daily needs, like if I could bring my bicycle in the public transit, or if I would have a room to store bike at my apartment, because a lot of people, that's a huge barrier. Even if they know how to ride a bicycle, even if they have cycling network, even if they have all the skills, they don't have a place to keep the bike safe at night. If they don't have that, they will never cycle. And then other things like having a bike sharing scheme or having an electric bicycle, which is kind of relevant here in Lisbon. Lisbon is not that hilly, but in people's minds, if you are not cyclists, if you only know the car ways of getting from A to B, you think differently, right? So e-bikes became also very relevant to reduce the car speeds, like in general in the city and so on. And the top of the pyramids are those things that are more individual, more personal, such as having some coworkers or friends influence some family that already cycles and that can make that little pressure, or the doctor telling, oh, you need to improve your lifestyle or improve your health, you should cycle more. Those people, they already don't have the other barriers, so they just need a final push to start cycling.
You were saying that when you started the study, there were not a lot of people biking in Lisbon. There was not a lot of cycling infrastructure, not really a ton of bike share stuff going on. So has that changed or gotten better since that
Yeah,
time?
fortunately, yes. When I started this study, it was back in 2015, maybe 16 or so. Our model share was pretty low, less than 0.2% of cycling trips. And there was a moment in the Lisbon history between 2017 and 2019 or 2020 that there's a lot of investment in cycling infrastructure, bike sharing with an e-bike fleet. And there was a boom of people start cycling. And with the pandemic, if you visit Lisbon today, you will not see like a very low cycling maturity city. You can find cyclists cycling in the peak hour with kids on their bikes. Things change, fortunately, and we hope that they keep improving. And also, we hope that this study would help policymakers to understand what are the needs for different groups of people. Not everybody has the same needs to shift the mobility behavior, but if we look at just a segment of people that has these needs, if we teach every kid in the elementary school to ride a bike, okay, maybe we are eliminating a barrier one at a time, and we'll get to a point that there's no excuses to not walk or bicycle for very short trips in urban environments.
Yeah. I mean, less than 10 years, that sounds like a pretty big shift to me from people who were barely biking to now you have people commuting and using cargo bikes and stuff. So that's pretty great. You just mentioned like teaching kids how to ride bikes in school. Was there like a big educational shift? Because number one is the bike skills on the hierarchy. So were there like classes for where people could learn how to ride a bike and adults and kids alike?
There's a national strategy in Portugal that aims to daily trips using bike reach 10% in 2030. So has been some effort to put kids learning how to balance in a bike at the elementary schools. But this is a major concern, I must say, because we know that more than 50% of kids go by car every day to school. And we are talking about elementary schools that are supposed to be very close to home place, 10 minutes, 15 minutes walk. And the parents and caregivers, they drive them every day to school, which can have impacts when they reach adulthood for not knowing other transportation modes, so they cannot make a conscious option when selecting which mode they're using for each different activity. But also some cognitive and motor skills that is already been studied that you can lose if you are in a car every day and not playing around with the street furniture and going through the park and meeting other neighbors and so on, right? So if you have some public policies directed to kids going to schools, that can change the mobility in the future. So you probably won't have some results in 2 years or in 5 years. You'll have the results in 10, 20 years. But you're also taking cars from the daily activities. So if me as an educator or a parent or mother, if I drive kid to school in the morning, then I'll be stuck with the car during all my trips during the day, right? If I don't use the car in the first trip in the morning, maybe I'll have the opportunity to go for lunch by foot or go to the gym by bus and so on. That would also reduce the car dependency and improve public space and health and quality of life.
Definitely. Lastly, just tell me about the lab that you work in, because I feel like it's pretty rare that a major university has a lab focused on cycling and transportation for people.
So I'm part of the USHIT lab, which is a lab that works at Instituto Superior Técnico, the higher technical university, which is an engineering school in the University of Lisbon. Me and my colleagues, which are mostly PhDs and master students, their topics of research are mostly walking, cycling, shared mobility. And the aim is mostly how can we change our urban mobility? How can we shift people from car to walk more, to use more the public transit, the shared mobility? What are the barriers? What are the drivers? And also, of course, how can we improve all these systems, the public transit systems, the shared mobility systems? So, yeah, this is a researchers group we created maybe 10 years ago. We already have a lot of people with their research concluded. It's been kind of a reference here, at least in Lisbon and the metropolitan area, that we are doing a lot of nice stuff. But we came from a background of engineering school. So we are kind of also diving in a lot in social sciences, econometrics, how people make decisions, how people think. That's a world to explore that's very, very interesting. And there's no right answer for anything. So we have to explore a lot of dimensions for each challenge.
A lot of factors coming together that you have to consider. So thank you so much for being a part of that lab and doing the work that you do. It sounds like there's an important election coming up this weekend that will affect the city of Lisbon and cycling infrastructure and all that. So I hope that goes well.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you for inviting.
Thank you, Rosa.
That was Charlie Lighthizer interview. So
And
that's
you know,
cool.
Nick, I got to tell you, I still think a bicycle should be in the original triangle.
Yeah, you can make your own triangle too.
Oh, there you go.
But would it be at the apex or the base? The base, right?
I think at the base, or maybe right above food and water,
Yeah.
and love and sex, and all that stuff.
Well, I think actually love and sex might come higher than food and I don't know. It's up to your interpretation. I just want to put in here at the last minute a conversation I had with Craig from Bikes for All, which is a charity that gives bikes to people who need them.
Oh, that sounds great.
I'm talking to Craig at Bikes for All. How would you describe Bikes for All?
We are a charity that gives bikes to needy people. We take in donated bikes, fix them up, and give them out to folks in our community who need a bike for transportation, recreation, or whatever it may be.
This is your last regular hours because of winter?
Yeah, we're busy during the spring and summer as people get interested in biking and needing transportation. And in the winter, people tend to be using our cars or mass transportation rather than bicycles because it's just cold out there. So we kind of slow down at that time.
How long has this been going on?
It's been, 4 or 5 years, maybe a little longer than that. I joined maybe 3 years ago.
I've been living it for 4, and it was already gone before me.
What's your name?
Ron Albertson.
So you've been for same amount of time, roughly?
Yeah, maybe a little less. I think Ron was in when I joined up. A local man, George Kohut, founded the charity.
Oh, yeah, of course. Friends of Northampton Trails.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly.
Very good. And you guys just work on bikes?
Yeah, we just have a group of volunteer mechanics who come in and work on the bikes that come in. We get bikes that have been sitting in people's basements and garages for years, and the tires are flat, and it probably went into the storage because some little problem with the bike made it unrideable, and it just sat there. And then they finally give us a call and say, I'm not going to ride this bike anymore. Could you take it off my hands? And we do. People have some pretty nice bikes that hardly need any work, and then some are kind of rusty old antiques that require quite a bit of effort to bring them back to life. But we kind of take in all kinds. Usually our clients and are people who really need it for transportation. So they don't have a car, they need to get to work. We have, homeless people. Some, the prisoner population has learned about us, so we get some calls from the jail when someone's just been released and they've got no way to get around except public transportation, which is kind of sketchy around here. I mean, it works to a degree, but having a bike is a great supplement. So those people will come in. Others who who just don't want to spend their money on a car like to have a bike. So we and this summer we had a lot of international students at Smith who were, because of the immigration situation in this country, did not want to go home, didn't want to have to leave the country and come back and risk that. So they decided to stay on, and they were kind of stuck because the school was not operating. So they came to us and drew on our bike inventory to give them some means of getting around the community during the summer when classes weren't available and the Smith campus was kind of shut down. So that was kind of an unusual situation that we hadn't seen before this summer.
Mm-hmm. So how many people are involved in this?
Well, we have probably half a dozen regular mechanics. Mm-hmm. Some people kind of come in and out, and might come in occasionally or kind of drift away. But I'd say about 6 regular mechanics. But, we could use more in case anyone out there is interested in this kind of work. It can be rewarding. The mechanics also help people with bikes. So when, people come into our shop, typically on Wednesdays, and we show them our inventory and help match them to a bike that'll suit their needs. We also try to give them a helmet because we kind of feel it's important that they're safe out there. And you're just able to help someone who often really needs this facility that we have for them. So it's kind of enjoying, just helping people.
If somebody wants to help or donate a bike or get a bike,
we have a phone number, 413-247-4186.
Thank you, Craig, for telling us about Bikes for All.
Thanks for coming by.
Well, good show.
I think so. We want to thank our guests, Jennifer Gil, Rob Kadota, Damian Kevitt, Josh Bowden, and Rosa Felix. Then we want to thank our regulars, Julie Richard, Charlie Lighthizer, Amy Ziering, Lindsay Sturman, Josh Hagland, Kevin Burton, and I think that's it.
Do you want me to do the quote? Do you have a quote?
Well, my quote for the 4th week in a row is, take our listener survey. What's yours?
Pluralistic ignorance is a social phenomenon where individuals privately disagree with a perceived group norm, but remain silent, mistakenly believing their own views are a minority. AI.
Perfect. So speak up, everybody.
All right. Thanks, Taylor.
Ride safe.
This episode of Bike Talk is sponsored by the law offices of Pocras and De Los Reyes, with offices in Los Angeles and Bakersfield and serving all of Southern California.
Bike Talk is a project of CRSP and the Los Angeles Eco-Village Institute.
And that was Bike Talk. If you have a story, a tip, or a topic, head over to biketalk.org and send us a message. Talk again next week.
Oh, got yourself a bike. Oh, got yourself a bike.